Hey everybody! So this is the last panel of the day. So I'm going to start off by introducing myself. I'm Harinder, or H as everybody calls me. I'm co-founder and COO of Maverick Games. Been in the industry for just short of 20 years, and I feel like Tracy, agree with me. I've employed most of the women locally as well, right? So, but yeah, so I have a reputation of setting up really inclusive, diverse teams. Because that is what's going to make you a better game at the end of it. So, thanks, Sarah. All right, so I'm going to talk the least, which may be the most challenging thing that I'm going to do today, because I talk a lot. So I'm going to start off by letting my amazing panel introduce themselves to... I'm going to say, so introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about your current role, but something that's helped shape your leadership journey. Start with you.
Are we going this side? Cool. Hello. Hi, everyone. I'm Kirsty, pronoun she, her. I am currently lead programmer at the wonderful Third Kind Games. We are under the virtuous umbrella of studios recently, so awesome to be working there. I've been a lead for 3 years, in the industry for nearly 9 coming up, so that's scary. But and yeah, one thing that's definitely helped me is mentoring and having an amazing support system behind me to prove up towards lead.
I'm Ellie Marshall. I'm the visual design director at Maverick Games. Hello, everyone. I've been in the industry for about 18 years or so. My passion is UI and UX. I've moved recently doing cinematics. So anything visual inside the game to make it look pretty, that's pretty much what I do. Something that's driven me in terms of leadership, I've actually, when I was at Codemasters, they made me group lead when I was 23 years old. So I've always been in some kind of leadership, kind of group lead position. And empathy, passion, consideration towards others has always kind of driven me. Also an advocate for hearing people's vulnerabilities. If I show mine, people will show theirs. So I think that's really important. And that's not a weakness, that's a strength.
Hi everyone, I'm Tiffany. I'm a senior gameplay programmer at GPS Games. So I'm not a lead yet, but watch this space. That will happen when I don't know, but that will happen. I'd say probably the most defining leadership moment for me was back in 2019. I was given full leadership of the Ubisoft Gaming School here in Leamington. So I got to teach young people aged 14 to 17 how to make a game. And I've got that passion for mentoring, for helping others, younger people get into this industry and helping women realize that there's a path for them in games and in engineering.
Hi everyone, I'm Georgie. I work at Flix Interactive as the operations manager. I joined 2 years ago and it's my first job in the industry, so I joined as operations support coordinator. My first managerial role was back when I was 18, and I've been, in terms of my leadership journey and kind of what's strengthened that, is just being surrounded by really incredible leadership roles and role models in general, particularly in the NHS as well, so I've been really lucky to have that in my development.
Hello, I'm Andrea. I'm from Rare. I'm the Creative Ops Director, so I look after all of the creative departments across all of our products. I've been in the industry 20 plus years as well, so old. Started when I was 5. So I've been in the industry a long time, a bit like Ellie in the past, worked at Codemasters. Started, I guess, the leadership journey as a group lead again, just with a focus on kind of the production side of game art, kind of efficiencies, and just wanting to create high-performing teams doing great artwork, really. But yeah, I don't know if that answers the question.
All right. Thank you, ladies. So I'm going to kind of break this conversation up a little bit. So let's start by, getting into the industry and, attracting women in the first place. So I'm going to start off by saying, where do you think the industry falls short of attracting at entry level? I'm going to start.
Should we just all hold up our hands? Yeah. I think predominantly, and the classic is just that gaming as a hobby is still seen as a very masculine field, which is incorrect because we all know the statistic of kind of having half of gamers are females. In terms of where where we also fall short in the industry is, I think, people still consider programming and development to still be masculine roles, which also means that it deters women from looking at perhaps the wider roles within the industry if they already consider the development side is still too masculine. So it's a very difficult stereotype to shift, I find. I could talk forever.
I can talk a bit more about engineering, and Kirsty can complete. But specifically in engineering, there is an even bigger disparity of men toward women than the rest of the industry. And in part is at education level, at young children people level, we tell those girls, you're not good at math. We tell people, in order to be a brilliant game engineer, you need to be doing a lot of mathematics. That's not true. I do gameplay. I touch math maybe twice a year, and if I need it, I Google it. So, you know, you can be a brilliant. The main skill for engineering is problem solving, creative problem solving. If you're a person who likes to get your hands into things, solving problems, finding solutions, engineering is for you, and that is totally irrelevant of gender. Anyone wants to add anything to that?
I think having more women in leadership is having more of a kind of visual set of when young people are looking into our industry, like having women out there that are actually selling the game, like talking about the game, because that's a very kind of male-dominated part of our industry, is that there's a lot of the kind of leadership that go out there and talk about the game, talk to the press, and I think if there's more of a kind of, if there's more women doing that, or more women are put in that position, I think that kind of naturally gives women of younger people actually that kind of vision of like organically, like it's okay, and it's a good place to be. That makes sense.
Yeah, I think kind of I talk about kind of like quality at source in terms of the pool. So, you know, more women play games nowadays, but historically, I think we'll start to see that come through, like the grass shoots, if you like. Same with women's football, like you start to see it coming in. Like the more games we make for a more diverse set of people, the more diverse the people are that are going to make those games, and so it's just a matter of time, I think, right? Rather than there's a massive problem. I think we've turned that corner. I think, you know, it's just, you know, how do we? I guess it's now to us to how do we entice more people in and encourage that diversity in the workforce.
So I know there's a lot of companies here today. So what advice would you give to companies on, or hiring managers on how to actually attract them in the first place, right? Sorry,
I keep holding my... So essentially, from what I see in recruitment, because I am involved in that a lot, is essentially the applicant pool, when you talk about the applicant pool, is predominantly men at the moment for most of our roles. And although, you know, all of our roles should go to the best person for that job, if you only have white men in your applicant pool, you are only going to recruit those white men, right? So I think fundamentally what we want to focus on for hiring managers and recruitment teams is the outreach section of it. So when we talk about kind of communities that you can reach out to, so Women in Games have a brilliant kind of Discord. They've got channels specific to job seekers, answering those questions, providing portfolio reviews, posting your open job roles in there as well to encourage more applicants, because you need a diverse pool to start with, otherwise you're just going to end up with the same people. And if you end up with the same people, you aren't going to get those kind of diverse perspectives, and I don't think your company is meeting its full potential. I look around me.
Yeah, again, absolutely agree. Usually any time, especially for engineering, obviously we're posting up in sort of Limit Break or any of the Discords I'm part of, so it's absolutely that. Obviously what we ourselves can do and advocate for, here's our amazing studios that we're working for as well. So, but also just, I guess, word of mouth as well is probably good. I feel sometimes you're like, oh, is this company actually good to work for, or is there like unknown secrets? So I think just, yeah, always advocating for it is a positive studio to work for, an inclusive studio to work for as well. It can go a long way for diminishing a few of the worries that we can sometimes have of, oh, is it actually, or is there a horrendous story I'm going to find out? So, yeah.
I mean, there's loads of that, though, isn't there?
I know.
Right, so, yeah. Anyone else? Yeah. Okay. Cool. All right. So, a quick one. So one practical advice for these companies. Then, what's the one thing that practical they can change tomorrow? Well, okay, we'll give them tomorrow off. Sunday.
salary transparency.
Oh God, it's hard to beat that now. Yeah, I think inclusive language is something that can sometimes be used with even just on the day-to-day. I usually use folks, that encompasses everyone. Guys can sometimes just be, it's only the men in the room as well. It's the same with the player, it's always he. Use the player, they, it can really help just kind of eradicate that.
Oh, I know. Yeah, we're too close. I think one thing that you could do tomorrow that is actually quite simple is looking at your open job roles and looking to make sure there's no unconscious bias. So ensuring that you haven't got the language there that is aggressive and strong, and maybe kind of discussing with your teams in terms of if this job role, you know, you had seen when you were trying to break into the industry as a woman, like would this deter you because of the language used and things like that. I know Rare, I'm talking for you, Andrea, that's fine. Yeah, it's fine. We agreed to that beforehand. So I think Rare also vet kind of their roles as well in terms of just making sure that, like, you want to talk about that, or should I talk about that for you?
Yeah, definitely. There was, there's been reports, I can't remember, somewhere, you can look them up. I won't source them, but just the language used in a job spec will deter, I think, unless a woman fulfills 80% of a job spec, they won't apply. Whereas guys, you know, you're really ballsy there, and you kind of, if you fulfill 20% of a job spec, you'll go for it. So just naturally, yeah, well, just go for it. So, yeah, so we try and use more inclusive language that, you know, you don't have to be like the absolute pinnacle of art, because who really is, like, you know, and if that's going to put people off, you actually find that people that are really quite good are actually quite self-deprecating, so are actually like, oh, that's not really me. So if you make it more rounded, then, you know, you actually see more women apply for roles, so.
I was going to talk about both of those things, but instead I've got an even spicier one.
Excellent. It's about time this
Get your men to be allies. When's the last time you had unconscious bias training? When the last time you sent your men to this kind of talk, you know, prompted them? When the last time you put one of your men in a room full of women, having a meeting, having a creative discussion, and that man realizing they're perfectly fine without me? Why are those women not more prominent in my company?
We do that all the time at Maverick, literally. So, yeah. By the way, for the women in the audience, if you look at job description and you can do 80% of it, and there's 20% you don't apply for it, because it is in the first place, right? Because you're better than that, right? If it's you know, you've got to have those challenges, right? Because it's not just about fulfilling what they do, right? You've got to challenge yourself because you fucking deserve it, right? You deserve those roles, so go and apply for those. Make sure you're challenging yourself, right? Sorry. Did you want to say something? Sorry, all right. Good. Sorry. Right, look. All right, okay. All right. So, we talked about that. Let's talk about staying in the industry, right? Talk about culture, studio cultures, and, you know, what we can do to make sure that people are thriving in those environments, and what real inclusivity looks like for us. So, what does a truly inclusive workplace look like?
I think overall being safe at work, being happy as who you are at work, I think is a key point. Yeah, just turning up as you are, whether that's on a good day, bad day, or a fucking excellent day. I think that's the key thing, and not being discriminated against for anything. So.
Reach. I think the only other thing that I would add to that is a truly inclusive workspace is somewhere where they see the strength in their diversity and how that can benefit their company, and actively encourages it as a result. So it's seeing that as a strength and making it public as well in terms of that being a benefit.
All right, so you said spicy, so let's get spicy. Right, okay. Yeah, I would like you all to channel your inner maverick right now, right? So, what can we do better to challenge that toxic behaviour, right? And those subtle gatekeeping that we know still exist in the games industry today, right? So, be a bit of me. Come on, girls. Come on, you can do this.
I think it's understanding that we all have a responsibility and a role to challenge those behaviours. I wouldn't want anyone at Flix thinking that because of their role or because of their gender or because of their lack of tenure that they cannot call someone out for that behaviour. And we also need to be considering as companies that ensuring that if those people don't have confidence to do it themselves in that moment, that they have a lead or they have an HR rep that they can speak to, and ensuring that we have that inclusive space where we can talk about that was a bit shit, and just to kind of like encourage people to call stuff out as it happens. Because if something happens to you that's kind of toxic and you're not saying anything about it, we're not actively preventing it from happening to someone else in the company, right? So I think that's important that we all realise we all have that responsibility.
I would also say public accountability within the company, right? If somebody does something wrong, and that's regardless of gender or like seniority or anything like that, don't hush it under the rug. Even if you resolve the issue internally, even if you like go through the motion of like the discipline motion, if it has to go that far, is to actually say, hey, we've identified some issues at our company regarding like inappropriate behavior. We've taken some appropriate action. Here's a reminder to you all that we will have zero tolerance towards this kind of behavior. Make it clear that something has happened. Obviously keep it legally compliant and all of that. But like, you know, make it clear it has happened. We have done action, because it built that trust. It built that safe space for women and people of underrepresented gender, race, or anything, that they have a safe space to speak to, and they will be supported if anything happens.
I think one thing is championing people's vulnerabilities. I think it's very, very hard for people to come to the surface, because we're very good, in general society, we're very good at making the abnormal normal. And by people knowing that it's okay to be vulnerable, and I think we have to show that ourselves so we can show it to other people, that by being vulnerable ourselves, it allows the other people or anybody else to say, okay, actually, it's okay that I can be honest, I can be open, I can go to these people, I can trust these people. Trust is a huge thing. And I think a lot of us, and I've been through it myself, because you start, when something happens, you start questioning yourself. You go through this whole narrative inside your mind of, shall I say something? Will they believe me? Will they think I'm being stupid? Am I just being stupid? Then you start pushing yourself back into self. And I think it's so important for everybody that we surround ourselves by in the workplace, we show honesty, and we show that it's okay to be vulnerable. And I'm going to keep saying the word vulnerable because I think it's so important. I almost swore then. Because it opens everybody up. Fucking be vulnerable. So yeah, I think that's really important. And I think it's important for anybody in leadership to be vulnerable themselves.
Is that everybody? Yeah? Anything else? No? So I'm just gonna say this. I'm just gonna add something in that wasn't actually on the questions that I sent out to you earlier, because I think we should, right? Because we're talking about toxic behaviours, right? Yeah, they're all shitting themselves, right? Talking about toxic behaviours, right? And we're talking about things where you're tolerating, and you see companies tolerating. Well, I think that press and from that news story about Ubisoft earlier this week, where we kind of knew what stuff that was going on, but absolutely disgusting, right? Absolutely disgusting that was allowed to go on, right? That is just not in. That is not how anybody, games industry or not, should feel in the workplace or be treated, right? So, so it is so important to call anything out. And if your leadership team do not listen to you, that is not the studio for you, right? There's better studios out there. I guarantee you there's better studios out there. Do not work for those toxic environments, because they don't exist to be an organisation. Anyone add anything to that?
I think you agree.
All right, thanks, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I was going to say absolutely just feel free to just try and leave there, because, yeah, as someone that came from a company that definitely had the misogynistic outlook, and I'm not going to delve into it. But they've gone under now, it's fine. They've gone under, it's fine, they had their coming. But yeah, but yeah, it is a shit environment, especially if you were coming into the industry as a first timer and you don't know, you think, oh, this is the way it is. It absolutely isn't. Find an outing and get a new job elsewhere. I took it too long. Had to wait until I got made redundant, and then find the silver lining of obviously going off to a new company and realizing, oh, this is what it should be like. So yeah, I would absolutely advocate for it if you're in that situation. Just if you're not comfortable, leave.
Yeah. All right. I'll go back on script. You'll all be happy to know. Right, okay. Let's talk about those, you know, because this is great. We've got some creative folk here, and we've got some tech ladies on the audience as well. So let's talk about, in the panel. Let's talk about those roles in particular, right? And how we make sure that they're available for women, right? And marginalised people. So I'm going to ask you all first, right? So, I'm sorry. I can't say because I'm also quite old. Have you ever had to advocate for your own leadership potential, and how did you navigate that?
I wouldn't so much say advocate, just more keep the pressure on and just get an understanding of what it's going to be to get up to a leadership position. Joining TKG, it was very much, I'm a programmer, that was fine, and then realised that I wanted to become leader. Not for the money, as somebody asked, it was very much for the title. Case in point, obviously we don't have that many women in leader and seniorship roles, and especially when I was coming through university, I didn't have anyone to look up to at that point. It was all the white dudes coming in and be like, yeah, join the industry, and I'm like, I need to see myself up there. Or it would benefit me to see myself up there for sure. So I think also just, kept going back to my lead to be like, hey, what can we do? What opportunities can I get? And just if you are on that other side of becoming a leader, or you are a leader of someone that's wanting to do that, find them opportunities. A lot of my skill set is like communication, organization, problem solving. Those first two is very good demonstrated on just, here's an initiative, here's a feature that you can take a leadership on and run with it. So provide those opportunities and also just make it a clear pathway on how to get up to a lead, and also support them as well.
I'm going to ask you something direct, Andrew. I'm looking at you, eyeballing you now. So, you know, and I think you and Ellie, you've kind of done this already, right? So are women being given the same opportunities to lead those flagship projects in key creative roles?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I can only speak at Rare. Like, you know, we've got quite a few really talented senior women in the studio. So some of these questions I kind of like, I don't quite see them because I think, you know, we're already in a studio that's pretty inclusive. But if I go historically back in time, you know, the industry, I don't want people to think the industry is like horrific now, but like back in the day it was, you know, it was bad, right? You know, like loaded magazine on the wall, you know, calendars and, you know, yeah, all of that. But like now it's a lot tamer than that. So it is a lot better. But and we do have that. But I think like to Kirsty's point, just the skills of kind of being, you know, organised and focused and all the skills that you need in leadership are not agenda neutral, right? Like it's not, you know, either or. So I think as long as you're demonstrating that constantly, I mean, in the past, I think probably Ellie and I have had to really advocate and push for that in probably quite aggressive ways, or it would have felt aggressive at the time. I think now again, just because the workforce is much more diverse, I just don't think people have to show up with their like alpha kind of like vibe going on. So for me, not so much.
I thought about this question, and I think it really depends on who you're surrounded by in your workplace. I think if you're surrounded by the right people, you'll organically move naturally, and I think there's no real question. I think from my own experience, as Andrea touched upon, when I first became group lead many years ago, I feel quite old now. My grey patch is getting bigger. Being in meetings in a position where you're in a position to have a voice, I felt like I had to really shout. I had to really be loud. I had to feel like I had to be louder than the men in the room to be heard. And I think that's something that's actually changing today. Is actually women are being heard in these spaces. It never used to be like that. You know, the aggression used to have to come out. And, you know, through the years, I've had to taper myself down because I don't have to be aggressive anymore. because I'm not in those spaces of, right, there's all these older white dudes who are just like ranting and raving, and I have to say like, oh, listen to me. You know, it's not like that anymore. For where we are at the moment, but unfortunately it still exists, because there are workplaces that I was in not so long ago which was, I'd say 90% men, and there was only a couple of us women, and that was about 6 years ago. So I'd say we still got a lot of work to do, but I think, you know, from a perspective of what's the word? My mind's gone blank. Oh wait, it's coming. It's been a long day. I think, you know, in spaces where women like never used to be heard, I think that's definitely changed a lot today. And I'm definitely not shouting, but I'll leave it there because I'm waffling.
I just want to say I remember working for a Japanese organisation where I would ask a question to some people in leadership and they would reply to my male colleague. Yeah, that was a thing, and it was okay.
That's actually something interesting to touch upon is sometimes cultural differences, right? We're here in Britain, and I want to say that the United Kingdom is a fairly progressive country compared to a lot of the places in the world. I know we're nowhere near where we should be, but trust me on that. And you were talking about Japan, and I'm talking about certain like Eastern European countries where culturally, these people don't understand the principle of a woman in leadership. They've just been raised like that. It's not even really their bad. But like, what can you do, right? It's kind of like you're going to have to fight for yourself. You're going to have to prove yourself 3 times as much as your male counterpart. You're going to have to find allies higher up, higher above them, who will work with you. And if none of that is happening, then just follow Kirsty's advice and just leave.
It's solid advice. It is. Right. So what I'm going to put this to you, Georgie. What needs to change structurally or culturally to support more women into these executive roles?
Thank you. So kind of just leading off what you said, Ellie. Oh, sorry, Tiff. Leading off what you've said in terms of women's voices being heard, I think it's a fundamental that if you are mid-level and senior as a woman and you don't feel like you're being heard or you don't feel like you're being included in decision-making conversations, you're not going to put yourself forward for a leadership role or an executive role because you know it's only going to get worse. If you're not being heard and when you're in a mid-level, how are you ever going to get your voice heard to your CEO, right? So that's one thing that we need to make sure is happening. I appreciate that it is a lot better now than it used to be, but it's not good enough. In terms of other structural things we can think about, I think it's really important we lent more into kind of like women will sometimes not apply for things unless they tick every box. And I think we need to be clearer in our expectations and our career progression paths as well as our goals that are tangible, because I think sometimes women are told, oh, you're not yet ready, but they don't get to hear why they're not ready yet. And it's a bit like, what do I do? And then there's no actual thing to be given in terms of this is your goal, this is your career progression, right? So at Flix, it's very much a two-way street in terms of what do you want to get into? What are you enjoying about your job and what do you want to get more into? Because we are also very flexible with our roles. So I think if you're a company that's very structured in terms of your career paths, in terms of, you know, you have to go senior, you have to then go lead and you can't sidestep, I think there are going to be some strong and really overperforming people in your company that feel a bit pigeonholed. So I think it needs to be, in terms of how we can change things, it's having that conversation about whether there is room to invite a new role that will fit that specific person who is of really loads of benefit to your company, right? And could further benefit your company if you just opened up a bit more of a clear position for them, rather than being like, no, you have to wait until lead, or you have to wait the given 3 years required to be a lead, which is a separate bullshit issue, but that's fine. I'll stop because I'll carry on.
I've actually got a practical example of that where I was trying to get my promotion to senior and I was told, you can't be a senior because you've not managed anyone. It's like, well, yeah, but like you've not given me that chance that I've been asking for it. Also, we're not recruiting junior. Who do you want me to manage? And I was like, what about that thing I've been doing, that leadership thing I've been doing on the side? I was like, oh yeah, but that's leadership. That's not senior. I was like, well, if I can do lead, I can do senior. Thank you. And then I just ended up taking Kirsty's advice and just found a different job. Who gave me senior?
TLDR, find a different job.
Find a different job. Yeah. Yeah. Follow Kirsty's advice. I like it. Let's keep going with that one. All right. Do you know what? From my personal thing about being a good leader, I think takes three things, right? Or what people expect from you, and that's clarity, direction, and empathy, right? And they're three what I feel really important, and you can't have one without the other, because you cannot also be so empathetic that you're not giving people the clarity that they don't know what to do. So all of those three things have to come together. Or that's certainly how I've winged it over the last few years. So yeah. All right. Okay. So let's talk about zooming out a little bit. Talk about perception. And you touched on this a little bit, didn't you, really, Ellie? So we talk about who we see in games and who we imagine belongs in the first place. So it starts long before applying for the job. So leaving out what role does representation, it's late in the day, in marketing and in media play in shaping those perceptions?
I think positive and negative. So, for example, I love that there are so many more kind of women streamers out there at the moment playing a wide variety of genre of games, because at source, it shows girls play games too. And I feel like we still have to stress that before we even discuss getting into the industry, right? So positive in that sense. Also positive in the sense that, when you see Sarah Bond going on Xbox Game Showcase or whatever to, strong leader, love to see that. State of play, seeing women presenters, we love that. But then you have got the negative, and it depends what side of the internet you're on. Like if you're on Reddit, for example, you're going to get the negatives, right? You're going to be talking about the toxic behaviors in the industry, the scandals. You've also got kind of the fact that, everyone's been making redundancies in the last 3 years or whatever. And if you're only on LinkedIn, that's probably all you'll ever see, right? Is just this industry is not sustainable. And as women, I sometimes feel like we really want that security more than anything. We're less likely to take risks. So if we're just seeing that negative side of the industry in terms of the media is portraying that games industry is in strife and it's never going to come out the other side, that is the impression you're going to take. So I think the role of media and marketing is really important, but it could go either way depending on where you are. You haven't said anything in a while.
We talk about schools, right? Because I've got a 15-year-old daughter, right? And when she was younger, she was always like, I want to be a scientist when I grow up. But that's kind of, she doesn't anymore. She wants to be a YouTuber. But that's like all teenagers, right? So, but that influence really early on. And I remember having a conversation with her maths teacher, and it's just like, girls still don't engage as much in those STEM subjects as much, right? So, what can we do? What do we need to make sure we're talking to those schools?
You're speaking to the person that was the only person that was in the computer science class at high school and at uni as well. So. Exactly. Yeah, I would love to say that it got to me, but I was just like, I love what I'm doing, I don't care. I didn't mind that I was surrounded by guys, and I just didn't think anything of it at the time. And then obviously as you progress, you go, this is actually a bit of a problem. So, but yeah, I think absolutely at a younger age, obviously having someone, as I mentioned earlier, obviously looking up to that, yeah, video games is a fucking awesome career to be in, let's do this. And it can also be in engineering, as well as obviously the plethora of other roles that we've got within this. So, So yeah, I think obviously we can go down to school level. Like I know at TKG we do a lot of work for going into schools to be like, yes, video games is a career you can take, which is awesome. I've done that as well, and I've actually had one young girl that was like, oh, can I make a video game idea that I've got? I was like, absolutely, you can. And just seeing their face light up was amazing, because I've very much always tried to be the person that I wish I had coming into this industry. So yeah, I think that on top of kind of after school clubs, if it's coding clubs or anything that's specialised, I think is awesome. I know someone, one of my mates has got a kid that does that, and I was like, I really wish I had that when I was growing up. That would have been amazing. So yeah, I think just outreach and more specialised programs for obviously getting women into more STEM subjects would be grand. So.
I would say also, like specifically for STEMs, engineering and those professions, is bringing out the creative side of it. Stop selling it as it's a tech nerd thing. And if you just have to love computer, you just have to love like making computer, building computer, repairing computer. That's great if you do. I do. I was building computer when I was 10, and that's kind of like, but my dad was an IT engineer, and I had that role model. I had that entry point. But I love saying that engineering, game engineering, is finding creative solutions to technical challenges, and putting the word creative into it, I think, is making it a lot attractive to a wider diversity of people.
I think also it's touching on other subjects in schools that actually influence the games industry, because yes, of course, there's engineering, there's computer science, there's game design, there's everything like that. But I think there's also missing parts of the jigsaw puzzle that actually have a big influence in how you can get yourself into the games industry. And I know from my own experience, it wasn't game design, it wasn't computer engineering or anything like that. It was graphic design, and that's how I got into the games industry. My pedigree is graphic design. I absolutely love it. I say every graphic designer's got a bit of OCD. So if you've got a bit of OCD, get yourself in there. So I think it's important for people to understand actually many subjects can help you get into the games industry. Photography can help you get into the games industry because you have an eye. You have an eye for cinematics. You have an eye for composition. You know, it can come from many different areas, not just specialised subjects that's your kind of stereotype, if you like. So I think if more people understood, more students or young people understood actually, if I study this and if I put my passion into this, I can actually bring it into the games industry because it's there, because it touches on everything.
Yeah, I think going on from there, it's kind of, well, I think Kirsty mentioned it earlier, or maybe it was Ellie, just creative thinking, kind of that whole piece I think is really key, and that is in every single discipline within a game studio. Creative thinking is really at the core of what we do, and that can come from any like kind of God, I lost my train of thought. Subject at schools. I think career advisors, I go back, you know, way back, and I did an art A-level and I did computer science at A-level. There was never like, oh, you know, if you map that with that, then that pops out with that. It was just it, and I still don't think they're great on that front. Like the job kind of tangents to what you can go do. Not just in gaming, really. Like, I think if you go and do a history degree, you're probably going to become a history teacher, right? Like, I don't think there's, you know, that piece is there. And back in the day, there were no game-specific courses or anything like that. It was all very generalistic, and I came in through animation, through from film, and then into games as a result, which is quite a common pathway for people in arts. If you talk to anybody, and they probably were an animator at some point, because that's, especially if they're female, because that seemed to be the main route in. So just, yeah, the careers advice needs to be more thought through, like, you know, and I think, again, going into schools, that can only become more of an obvious kind of output. Coding clubs, and, you know, my daughter's school, they have like Minecraft club, and 50% of the kids that go to that are girls, and that's great to see. You know, so again, like, as games get more diverse, it becomes just more common. So
I also think one thing we haven't touched upon yet, but we discussed when we prepared for this talk, is the non-development jobs in the games industry as well. There's a real path for diversity into those jobs that are not actually making the game, but supporting the team who are making the game throughout. There are myriads of jobs out there that you can get qualifications for just through any normal non-game related path. And if you just love games and your core skills are not in any of the main development areas, there is still a path for you in the game industry. And we also need to, you know, talking back about the representation, advertise those roles, advertise the people working in those roles, and be like, hey, look at these awesome people who are in the non-game dev role, and you can be them.
Yeah. I'm actually an accountant by profession. That's how I got in the industry, and never once did I dream I'd be running a studio. And in fact, I don't even know how it happened, to be honest. I'll have to look back on that one day, but yeah. All right, we've had the 10-minute sign, so I suppose we'll start to wrap up. But we've got some last questions, and we'll take some questions from the audience in a minute. But so just some quick kind of advice and actions for everybody here we'll close out with. So individually, right, Tiffany, I'm going to start with you. So what one piece of advice you'd give to a woman hoping to break into the games industry today?
I mean, very simple, vague advice. Just go for it. If you want to do it, go for it. I mean, I know it sounds silly, right? But confidence is a big part of why women don't do it. Lack of confidence. I had imposter syndrome and nearly quit the game industry between my first and second job because I thought I was not good enough compared to my male counterpart. I realized that it was actually not that at all. I was just not aware, I was not self-aware of my own skill and finding my niche, finding where I truly shine. And once I got later in my career and I realized that my core strength is in that mentoring, in that leadership, I found my way and all of the doors suddenly open that felt closed before.
Go on, that's fine. Whoa. Yeah, just you. All right, Kirsty, this one's for you. If you could change just one thing, just one thing about the industry to make it more inclusive, what would it be?
Can I not do the usual thing of ask for 3 more wishes? I think kind of... I'm sorry, we got to pull the strings. Yeah, I think, I mean, as I said earlier, like everyone can absolutely go away and, you know, be more intentional with their language, be more intentional in who they're giving the opportunities to, and ensuring that we're opening the doors for the folks coming up behind us. Or, obviously, if you are a white man sitting in this audience, check in, be a decent ally as well, as we mentioned here. Yeah, there's a plethora of stuff from these lovely panelists, so I'm going to steal their answers.
Good. Glad you brought up the males in the room. Yes. So there, Andrea, there's lots of men that I know are currently working in the industry today, sat in the audience, and it's really good to see so many of you. Thank you. What can our male allies do to make things better from us? Like starting now, what can they do?
Well, advocate allyship within meetings, kind of, you know, I think you said about, you know, was it earlier? But we're talking about kind of answering a question and then getting the question put back to the guy sat next to you. I think just calling that out, and kind of quite often in the past I've answered a question and then the guy next to me said exactly the same thing and it was his idea, which is great and it's fine, and it's not fine actually, is it? No, it's not. So yeah, but someone to call that, you know, I've had good allies in meetings with me who've gone, actually I think that's exactly what Andrea just said, and then they kind of like, oh. So just be that guy, be the guy that you need to be, and stand up for not just women, because you know any kind of, there's plenty of people in meetings who are quiet, timid, but have great ideas, right? If somebody's not spoken in a meeting, kind of go, hey, what do you think, you know? Like, not call them out and go, well, you've not said anything. Kind of like her, you know, that's not great, is it? But, you know, like, bring people in, invite people in, because sometimes, you know, you're kind of there and you're like, oh, I think I've got something to say, but maybe I'm not important enough or whatever. But, you know, everyone sees that in a room and can be the person that introduces and makes that introduction, so.
Cool. All right. Georgie, I know you've been dying to get the mic. So, what gives you hope about the industry and where it's heading from here?
So when I look at the industry now compared to what it was like when I was a kid, there has been some massive changes, like in the last 15 years, just for it to be acceptable to play games as a woman now anyway. So there is real tangible hope. I think progress is still a little bit uneven, but progress is progress, and I really feel like the shifts that are happening right now suggest that there is very much a very inclusive future on the near horizon, right? So some of the things that I'm hopeful for, that I love seeing, is, you know, we're talking about male allies, the fact that, you know, male leaders, peers and players are all becoming better allies for women and marginalised groups, rather than just kind of putting it on those people to invoke the change they want to see. You really appreciate that, of course, change comes from everyone and diversity comes from everyone. I think as well, just in terms of the mentorship opportunities that are available right now, stuff like Limit Break we mentioned earlier is amazing. We didn't have that back in the day. I'm only 30, but back in the day. And yeah, I think just there has been massive change. There's still a long way to go, right? But I think just seeing, I mean, in events like this, there are always, I see, like, women in games tracks happening at these events as well. So we're open and honest about the topic a lot more than we used to be. And then, yeah, literally just down to the fact that women and marginalised groups are more vocal and more connected than they ever have been before. You know, there might have been a time where if I was in the industry 10 years ago, I wouldn't have felt like I could have raised or talked about this topic as much as I can do now, because I'm actively invited to. So I think there's a lot to be hopeful about, I think.
All right. And then, Ellie, I'm going to give you as you're with me at Maverick, I'm going to give you a little Maverick magical wand. And with that, you could take one barrier away completely, just like that. Right. What would it be?
There is one thing, but I won't say it out loud. I think for one barrier, I think removing that credibility gap for women. And I think it's removing that disbelief from women that feel like they don't have authority. Because I think naturally as women, we feel that we have, I know for myself, we naturally have like low self-esteem. And I think it's removing that notion of the disbelief within ourselves that we have no authority, because we do, and I feel like we really have to build ourselves up sometimes to kind of break past that barrier. And I think if we could, I know for myself back in the early days, if I could naturally remove that default of myself, I think I'd see myself in a lot different perspective a few years ago, and that's something I know for myself I've had to work through. So if I could remove that barrier by default, I would, and I do think that's going to be. Going back to what I said earlier on, I think it's all dependent on the people that you surround yourself by, and those barriers are coming from other people. That's what I'd remove.
Nice. All right. I would say, like, my job and your job of your leader is to hold up the mirror so you can see what they see, and hopefully anybody that's worked in one of my previous studios will know that. That's hopefully what I've done for you. All right. Can I ask a question? Can they ask questions? Thank you. Right. We're out of time, but yeah. So, questions. Oh, wait, shall I run out with the... Oh, God, I'll be Annika Rice.
Hello. So I'm sure like a lot of people have been in this situation where you're the only woman in the room, and sometimes I found that sometimes when maybe people are a little bit well-meaning, you kind of become the authority on all things female, and that can derail your actual responsibilities and progression and the thing that you're actually there to do. Do you have any advice for women who find themselves in that position?
Hi, Mia. So basically, I mean... So basically, token woman in the room, right? In terms of like, oh, you can be the token woman in this board meeting because it's with women. Classic, right? In terms of, it's just believing in yourself and having the confidence in yourself that you are there for a reason. You know, you could be put in these positions, and I hate that it happens, but it does. You can be put in these positions where it's kind of like, you know, join this conversation, but we'll just talk to you about something. Or even worse, you can go and get the coffees and teas. That's terrible one. But I think it's just believing in yourself a bit more. I know that's such a cop-out answer, but it's what has helped me in the past in terms of I'm part of this discussion for a reason. I have very good ideas. I'm willing to discuss these with you, but I'm going to put these on the table. And it's just when you feel a bit shot down by those kind of like examples, it's just kind of remembering that you're there for a reason and how far you've come as well, and just trusting in yourself, I think, if that helps. I don't know if that was a bit shit. Anyone else? Yeah.
Just to say as well, when it is the token woman, no woman wants a job because she's a woman, but she doesn't want to not get the job because she's a woman. So just remember that. Right.
This is a slightly personal one from a friend of mine who got turned away from London Tech Week for having her baby with her. That happened on Monday. Yeah, she was on the front of the Times on Wednesday. And it's great to see events like Develop have got a creche and lots of provision. It's brilliant to see parents here today bring their babies into the event as well. Is there anything you think studios can be doing to help provision for mothers who have got new babies, or parents as well, who are supporting new children, that can help them stay in the industry and stay current with what's happening as well?
Thank you, Andy. Who wants to answer this?
I'm the one person who doesn't and probably won't have children who will answer this question. But I think just to give some example, we're talking about equality there. We're talking about like maternity leave, great. Paternity leave, you want your woman back in your company sooner? Offer the men the same paternity leave. I'm sure they'd be glad for it. They'd be glad. They will also help raise perspective and change this bias against woman is looking after the child, man is bringing the money, right? We're talking about like flexible working policies, right? Even if you're on site, just being able to say, hey, today can I be working from home? Or I know that I had a doctor's appointment today at 11:30, right during car hours. My work was like, sure, just go for it. You know, it's your health, it's important. It acknowledges that, giving people the flexibility. You've got a young child at home, acknowledge that maybe that person will have to just dash out, work from home for a little bit. So just that flexibility. I don't know if anybody else has more experience to add to that, because I'm not a parent, so I can't really speak too much, but invite more parent women to these panels next time.
Cool, didn't we?
Yeah, actually, that is true. So we, as being a parent, we when we set up to have this conversation, it was okay to say, oh, that's school pickup time, right? So to move it, right? So that's okay. But you're absolutely right. Creches are a good thing, right? And equally, dads in the room, when you're looking after your child, you're not babysitting, you're parenting, right? So don't forget that. Any other questions? Because I know he's going to take the mic off me in a minute. So.
This is this is more of a statement than a question, but I think it's really important to remember that misogyny happens in all types of work environments, and that you shouldn't pursue your dream career or your dream progression because it's happening in this company, because it happens everywhere. So follow your dreams and do what you really want to do, and then figure out, like, as you say, leave the company and find a better position. But yeah, it's always really important to not let certain things deter you or think that you're not good enough because they're not right, and there's that it's going to happen anywhere, so you might as well do what you really love.
But it doesn't happen everywhere. It doesn't happen at Maverick, and it absolutely shouldn't happen other places. Just want to get that in. Just going to do this bit of marketing now. Does not happen at Maverick. Sorry.
Question about representation and female characters in games. Is there anything you think that's missing currently, or if anything that you wish you were different or better?
This is when the female character goes, help, 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 hero, help me. Sorry.
I think, well, I'm going to take a bit of a spin on that. I wish that when there were strong female characters as MCs, like Siri, amazing, that you didn't see all the toxicity when we talk about the media being like, I can't relate because I'm not a woman. And as though you could relate to Geralt, right, in the previous ones. So that's, I've not answered your question, but it's just in terms of that's what I wish would be different, right? Because it's so brilliant to see. I never thought when I was a kid playing games like, oh, I don't have to play as a man, right? So I don't understand why some people feel like they can't play as a woman. And it's nice to see that actually we've got a lot of more female women MCs in our games. I think it's brilliant. I just hate seeing the other side of it where some people, again, on Reddit, I have to get off Reddit, but I think it's just kind of like that impression of, oh, CDPR have released, have shown about Siri, and it's like, oh, Siri. Oh. So, yeah, I just wish that part would change. Any more?
Try to stay on the seat as well. Yeah, absolutely to your point. It's awesome. We're getting more women characters that are, actually kind of driving their own destiny, not sitting in a castle waiting to be saved. I think there's also the fact as well, like as someone that is massively into motorsports as well, virtual racing, not real life racing, otherwise I probably wouldn't be here. But yeah, it's just like having more women, like even characters to play as, or like avatars to use in that scenario would be awesome. But I think as well, like whether it's women or queer characters or anything like that, like there's always a story to be told, and you can absolutely learn from that as well. And again, it's usually Reddit males, which yes, you should absolutely get off Reddit. That are just like, oh, I can't be. I'm like, okay, it's not the game for you. That's fine. Like it's okay if the game's not for you. I'm not a massive. So many out there. Right? I'm like, let's have the little segment that we have right now. Yeah, I've absolutely been called out on doing a talk about why queer representation in games should be important, to one guy being like, okay, but this doesn't apply to me. I'm like, cool, the door's there, my friend. Like, leave. Exactly, leave. I'm going to have merch next. But yeah, it's just like, it's okay, it's not for you. Like, move on, find something else that you want to play. But, the games are here for us, for the one to enjoy it. Like, let's have this, so.
one final one as well, and it goes back to what Ellie was saying earlier about vulnerability. I think we have either, like, in the past we had like the women that needed to be rescued and stuff like that. And now we have like really strong leading women who are like very extroverted, they're naturally strong, they're presenting as very strong, but we don't have enough women or even main character in games that are vulnerable, going through this vulnerability, exposing their weakness and growing from it. And I think just presenting those characters as less heroes and more human, regardless of gender, is also going to be key for diversity and representation.
Thanks. All right. I didn't think anybody else. Oh, come on, Gina. Oh, come on. Come and take a seat. Come on. Come on.
So I've just recently done a report on the gender pay gap within the games industry, and it's going to be 37 years before we get percentage parity at the rate we're working on, and 150 years before we get parity in the fourth quartile. Sorry. So that's the data and that's the rates. The biggest concern I have is that 23 out of the 26 companies who report say their percentage of women in the workplace dropped last year. So that's the first time we've seen that negative. So is it, do you think, a blip? Or can we turn this round, and how can we turn it round? There seems to be, with the change in political winds, that we are moving away from diversity being important when we're starting to get momentum. And what can we do as an industry to change that? That's quite a big question, sorry.
I would have expected nothing else from you, Gina, other than something that was just going to throw us all off key. I'm going to start a little bit because I know it's really shit. We've been fighting for forever for equality, right? That's what we want. I myself have been in a position where my male counterpart was paid significantly more than me. And we were doing the same job, and the only response I got was, yeah, but he's been doing it a little bit longer than you. I was like, yeah, but he's shit at it and I'm good at it. So why? Yeah, let's take that into consideration. But yeah, it's a huge problem. So one of the things that we did, I'm Maverick again, sorry, but we did straight away, the first thing we did was actually have pay transparency. Right, and which means that, so if anybody is starting a studio, I highly recommend it, because the problem, anybody working in a studio, the reason they don't want to put that on there is because there's massive discrepancies between what they're paying people, because guess what? The dudes walked in there and negotiated a better salary than you have, right, for the women in the team, because we're not good at, we are not good at negotiating, but we should be, right? Because we deserve the same salary, and it's not good enough that he's paid more than you. So that's the first thing we need to, and that's why your companies aren't doing that. But for us, we've put that in right from day one. Can't have that, right? And we can, and the people in the team can actually see that, right? And they can see that those opportunities are there. We put them on. We put that on our job descriptions. If we're looking at a range of experience, we put the range on. If it's a really specific that we're looking for, like our grad roles, they start at 30k. That's on there, right? It's on there, right? Because you need to live in Leamington. Who can live in Leamington for less than 30k, right? Please, if you can, let us know, right? But not that we're going to change our pay. But you can't, if our studio is based in somewhere where it is expensive to live, we've got to make sure we're paying our people fairly, because they're doing a good job, and we need to make sure that's the case. So yeah, I think that's some of the things we can make sure we do to make sure that is the case. But there's some big studios that are not willing, because it's going to cost them a fortune to fix that, right? So, and maybe they should open up their books, and they won't. So, sorry.
No, it's fine. It's more like a question back, and that's just actually a real genuine question of mine, is because that was last year, I can't help but feel that there might be a connection with the redundancies, which we know have disproportionately affected women. Why? Because women tend to have more junior roles in the industry. Why? Because we don't promote them. I might be completely wrong here, but I wonder if part of the drop is due to that. And if so, my hope is when the industry is finally, getting back on the mend, this will hopefully get back up. But I'm sorry, that didn't answer your question, but I was just curious about that.
Anybody wants to actually answer the question?
I think Gina's got the answer.
It's hard to tell. So gender pay gap reporting is required, but also telling me how, or telling everyone how big the workforce is. But people report their workforce at a different time they report the gender pay gap. So I think we don't understand the industry enough, and we don't understand the data that's there. I was really shocked to see that Sony had grown by 100 people last year, even though they'd laid off the London studio. So they laid off 90 people, but they took on 210. Yeah, but that's massive. But we're not talking about that. We're talking about how it feels, not where the data is or what's going on. So yeah, I mean, I imagine it is, but I don't know. But no one knows because no one's looking at it.
And you know, like you say, because it's companies over 250, isn't it? And what? Sorry. Can you? Oh, I will, because I can. It's fine. Don't have a problem. So yeah, we can do that. Yeah. No, we've got nothing to hide. Exactly. All right, we're talking gender pay gap. We're going to just all tattle in and we're going to keep talking about it, right? But any other questions before we finish off? No? All right. Okay, so I want to thank my amazing panellists for being awesome. Yeah, so give them a round. Thanks for everyone in the audience. And look, only 14 minutes over.